How's everybody doing tonight?
Yeah!
How's everybody doing tonight?
Yeah!
All right. We are progressives. We are progressives. We wear it proud. And we are organizing to build progressive power here in the great state of New Jersey. And we are standing on the shoulders of progressives who have been the best of our nation since the founding of our nation. It is the progressive movement that creates progress in these United States. It was progressives who ended slavery. It was progressives who got women the right to vote. It was progressives that got us the Green New Deal. Got to get us the Green New Deal. It was progressives that got us the New Deal. It was progressives that passed for us the Civil Rights Act. And we will be the progressives that future generations will say saved our planet from the climate crisis and saved our representative democracy from the oligarchs. Are we in this to win it?
Yeah.
Are we in this to win it?
Yeah.
And in terms of winning, we're not talking just about winning the White House for Senator Sanders. And we're not just talking about winning congressional districts for all the candidates that were up here a few moments ago. We're talking about winning and transforming our government, transforming our nation, so that we have a government that represents the people and not just the billionaires and the giant corporations.
That's right.
This is why we are part of the progressive movement. This is why I and many of us here in this room are part of the campaign to elect Bernie Sanders as president, and a lot of Sandernistas who are running down ballot with him. This is why we launched the Keady 2020 campaign in New Jersey's 4th District. Yes, we want to win our primaries, and we will. Yes, we want to win the general, and we will. We'll put Bernie in the White House. We'll put Smith into retirement in the 4th. We'll win all of these districts that the folks who were sitting up here a few moments ago are running for. But this is not enough. As progressives, it isn't solely about winning elections. As Larry alluded to, the fight goes on. Day after day, month after month, year after year, we have to continue to organize and organize and organize. We're not just organizing to win in 2020. We have to organize to win Medicare for all. We have to organize to win a Green New Deal. We have to organize to win college for all, to protect women's reproductive rights, to demand racial justice once and for all in this nation, to get the big money out of politics, to ensure that our union labor movement doubles in the next decade, to invest in education, to make sure that we have housing for all, that we have true immigration reform so we have a safe and welcoming America, to make sure that we push back against the NRA and get gun safety measures at the federal level that are as strong as we have here in the state of New Jersey. We have to ensure that we're growing the rights of our LGBTQ plus community. And we're going to legalize weed. And there are a range of other issues. If I missed one, please let me know later and I'll make sure I add it to the list. But we're in the midst of a movement. We're in the midst of a revolution. It's not enough to just oust Republicans and centrist status quo corporate Democrats. We have to win and usher in a 21st century New Deal. We have to save our planet. We have to create millions and millions of good-paying green jobs in the process. We have to provide Americans with the best health care of any nation in the world. We have to invest in our young people, and we have to take our government back from the billionaires, the corporations, and the hacks in D.C. who have sold us out to both of those. And we have to be ready to fight. Now, some of us have been in the fight for years, decades even. Some of us are a few days into the fight. Everybody's welcome in this progressive movement here in the state of New Jersey and throughout our nation. We've got to be ready to step up and boldly fight for the things we believe in. We've got to be ready to push back against the centrist narrative, against the cynicism of the GOP. Right? So, how are you going to pay for college for everybody? We hear this one, right? Well, right now, four-year colleges around the United States, it's $79 billion. That's the bill. On average, it's $8,738 for a four-year, for 1 year for a four-year school right now. That's the average around the country. You know what we spent in 2016 on federal grants for a lot of private colleges along with our public universities? $91 billion. So we can either tweak the money that we already got, or we can take Senator Sanders' idea and put that minuscule tax on those billions of dollars of trades that get done every day on Wall Street and generate the 79 to 80 billion that we will need to ensure that every kid in America who wants to go to college or a trade school after high school, that it's paid for as a public good and a public right. We can do that. We're going to get out and organize and fight for real criminal justice reform. We're going to end the failed war on drugs that has done nothing to stop the epidemics that we're seeing in our communities right now. It has done nothing but lock up predominantly black and brown folks, feeding the prison industrial complex and making a handful of people incredibly wealthy in that process. We're going to eliminate for-profit prisons. We are going to make sure that de-escalation tactics are put in the center of our police training so that we don't have one more African American who gets shot for walking while black. Right? These are the things that we are organizing for. We're going to get Medicare for All done. We're going to get it done. As Brother Larry said, Senator Sanders has changed the discourse on this. You now have to have a position on it. 2, 3, 4 years ago, it was, oh, those radicals, oh, Bernie. Every candidate is now forced to have a position on Medicare for All because of the organizing done, not just by Senator Sanders, but by all of us, forcing this dialogue. So I fully support the bill. Bernie wrote the damn bill, right? Yeah. And Representative Jayapal has the companion bill in the House. How do we pay for it, right? If you have health insurance right now, in essence, you are paying a tax, or your employer is. So I run my family's business. I've got to pay for my own health insurance. I have to have really good health insurance because I have, with my fair Irish skin, I've had scares with skin cancer. So I have to have good health insurance. You know what my health insurance with Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield in New Jersey costs me every year? $9,836.52. And that's just for me. If my daughter's mom and I, we switch back and forth on the health care plan, if Reese gets added to my plan, it's over 12 grand. Now, Bernie, with his plan, says, Jim, instead of you paying for that, almost 10 grand out of your pocket, you're going to pay 4% on your gross income. So for me right now, where my gross income's at, that would be $3,906.88. So I save $5,929.64. That's how we pay for Medicare for All. We are going to organize to close the gap in terms of income inequality. We're going to fight for the $15 federal minimum wage. We are going to press corporations to pay their workers. Right? We are watching Senator Sanders do this already. He is browbeating Amazon. He's browbeating McDonald's. Can you imagine what he's going to be able to do when he's president of the United States? And not just the great senator from the state of Vermont who's a candidate for president of the United States. We're going to force these giant corporations to pay their workers a decent wage instead of giving buybacks on the stocks and giving these lavish CEO luxury packages. Right? We are going to push a progressive tax plan and have a 70% tax rate, the highest tax rate, the highest marginal tax rate. Now, for people who may watch this, because it's being recorded right now, that doesn't mean if you're making 40 grand a year, you're going to be paying 70% on your 40 grand. And we need to know how to explain this to people. That's the highest marginal tax rate. That means if you make $10 million a year in income, your salary, the 10 millionth and first dollar gets taxed at 70 cents on the dollar. Now, the reason that you do this isn't so that we're getting that money. That isn't how a federal budget works. It's different than a state budget, county budget, a local budget. The federal budget is different because the Congress can issue fiat currency. That's a lecture for another day. But just know, we put this high tax rate in place because it is a hedge against the greed and destruction of the uber wealthy. Right? Let's say that the people right here in the front of the room, we have a corporation, and we got $100 million in profits. Right now, with a lower corporate tax rate, we're like, all right, let's take the money. And we're gonna take some for ourselves. We're gonna give the CEO a nice bonus. We'll give some of the people, the top executives, money. We're gonna bank some of it in an offshore account. If there's a 70% corporate tax rate, we sit here and go, I don't want the government getting all that money. Because the people who are in the heads of those corporations hate the government. Fine, let them. We're going to push back. And they're going to go, all right, we don't want the government getting 70 cents out of every dollar, so what are we going to do with this $100 million, Jack?
Reinvest.
Wait, didn't you want to build another factory like in your hometown to help them out? Didn't you want to increase your sales force and try to get into some other markets? Right? Hey, we got 1,000 people in our lowest end jobs. Should we give them like a $1,000 raise or a bonus at Christmas? Right? So that's why we put those high tax rates in. It isn't to grab the money, it's to hedge against the greed and destruction of these sociopaths that run these giant corporations. Yeah. So some other tools in the toolkit for dealing with the income inequality. 6 banks currently control $10 trillion of our nation's wealth. Right? It's 50% of our GDP. We're going to break up the big banks that are too big to fail. We are going to reinstate Glass-Steagall. We're going to throw white-collar criminals in jail with the same ferocity that we've been throwing kids in jail and we're selling dime bags in their neighborhoods trying to survive. We are going to cap credit card interest rates. We're going to cap ATM fees. We're going to audit the Fed and restructure it so that it is making our monetary system work for everyday people and not just for Wall Street investors. We are going to restrict high-velocity trading. We're going to reform the credit agencies so they can now put us in the same spot that we were in 2008, where because of their malfeasance, our global economy almost completely collapsed. And for the women in our audience, we are going to pass H.R. 7, the Paycheck Fairness Act, so we close that gap between women's pay and men's pay in the workplace. We're also going to solve the climate crisis. We're going to solve the climate crisis. We are going to take on the fossil fuel industry. We're going to transition to carbon-free energy. We are going to rebuild our infrastructure, rebuild our housing. We're seeing the initiatives being put forth by Senator Sanders and AOC and Ilhan Omar, where we can think about every government policy through the lens of how it impacts our climate, how we start to mitigate against the damage it's already done and usher ourselves into a new era, where again we're going to pass on a world better than we found it for our children and grandchildren. These are the 2 major crises that we as progressives have to address: the climate crisis and the crisis of the oligarchs. Everything else falls underneath these umbrellas, because if we don't get the big money out of politics and take the power back from the oligarchs and put it in the hands of the people, all these policy issues that I've talked about will not happen. And if we don't deal with the climate crisis, dealing with the oligarchs isn't even going to matter, because we will not have a planet that is habitable. Now, many of our centrist friends aren't talking about these issues with the same passion that we are as progressives. They're talking about Trump, 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 Russia, 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 impeachment, impeachment, impeachment. Are those things we should talk about as progressives? Absolutely. But if all we talk about is Trump, 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 Russia, 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 impeachment, 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 we play right into Donald Trump's hands. We must talk about, along with Trump and Russia and impeachment, and the Congress has a responsibility to act on the Mueller report, the whistleblowers, and the other things that Trump could be impeached for, a half a dozen things. But if we're not talking about Medicare for all, if we're not talking about the climate crisis, if we're not talking about creating jobs with living wages, if we're not talking about rebuilding our infrastructure, we will lose. And this is the message that we as progressives have to send to our centrist compadres in the Democratic Party. We're the ones who are out now knocking on doors. We're the ones who are hearing from people. You knock on doors, they're not asking about Russia. They're not asking about Trump. They're not asking about impeachment. They're asking about, is Medicare for all going to pass? Because my son has diabetes and we can't afford his insulin. This is why we have to continue to do the work that we're doing on the grassroots level. So what are we going to do? We're going to knock on doors. We're going to make phone calls. We're going to send texts. We're always going to be organizing. We don't need to listen to the polls. We need to knock on doors. We don't need to listen to the pundits. We need to knock on doors. We need to take control of our time and focus our progressive passion toward this political revolution. This is how we put Bernie in the White House. This is how we win our congressional districts with progressives all over the state of New Jersey. This is how we win local offices down ballot all over the state of New Jersey. And this is how we make sure our political revolution transforms the great state of New Jersey and these United States of America. And we will leave this country a better one than we found it for our children and grandchildren. Progressives, are you with me? Yeah. Let's get it done! There's still pizza and soda in the back.